Good morning, and allow me to warmly welcome all the officials from the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, the Ministry of Rural and Local Government, the Community-Based Environmental Protection and Enhancement Program, CPEP, members of the media and the public. May I advise that this meeting is being held in public and is being broadcast live on the Parliament Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can send their comments related to today's inquiry to our email that is parl101@ttparliament.org, our facebook.com/ttparliament, and Twitter @ttparliament. May I also indicate from the outset that the purpose of this meeting of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee is to examine audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of the Community-Based Environmental Protection and Enhancement Program, CPEP, for the period 2009 to 2014. The committee is desirous of hearing from the key stakeholders at CPEP to learn of the challenges being faced and determine some of the possible solutions and measures to overcome these challenges. The role of our committee is to help CPEP improve its delivery of services in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. May I repeat? The role of our committee is to help CPEP improve its delivery of services in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. I will now take the opportunity to introduce our committee, and I can start on my immediate right, far right. David?
David.
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, members. My name is David Small. I'm a member of the committee.
Good morning to everyone. I am Tim Gopi Singh, Vice Chair of the committee and a member, of course.
Good morning, everyone.
Foster, just press.
Good morning, everyone. Foster Cummings, member of the committee.
Good morning. My name is Wade Mark, Chairman of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. I will now invite officials from the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division to introduce themselves.
Good morning. I'm Sharon Mohammed, Senior Business Analyst, Investments Division.
Hi, good morning. Varuna Ramdial, Senior Audit Analyst, Investments Division.
And I'll now invite the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government to introduce themselves.
Good morning. Destra Bascom, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government.
Welcome.
Yes, good morning. Nilufer Ali, Accounting Executive 2, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government.
And I'll now invite members of the Community-Based Environmental Protection and Enhancement Program, CPEP to introduce themselves.
Good morning. I'm Keith Eddy, General Manager, CPEP.
Good morning. I am Avilia Stewart, Human Resource Manager at CPEP.
Good morning. I am Ms. Jody David, the Finance Manager at CPEP.
Good morning. I'm Dominic Grell, Operations Manager, CPEP.
Good morning. My name is David Roberts, and I'm the Business and Entrepreneur Development Manager at the CPEP Company Limited.
Well, thank you, and we'd like to welcome all of you. Mr. Eddy, may I ask what has happened to your deputy chairman who was invited and who had accepted our invitation to be here this morning? Could you indicate why he may not, or she rather, is not here?
Mr. Chairman, I did not receive any information from the Deputy Chairman as to why she's not attended.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Well, may I take this opportunity at this time? Huh? Yeah. Well, we want to record our disappointment because we did invite the deputy chairman because we know CPEP is without a chairman at this time, and we did get the clear undertaking that the deputy chairman would have been here. So we are very disappointed and dissatisfied that the deputy chairman is not here, and we'll have to communicate that disappointment and dissatisfaction to the permanent secretary, and through you, we'd like you to express our dissatisfaction, and we'll also write as well. But may I take the opportunity at this time to invite the general manager, Mr. Eddy, to make some brief opening remarks at this time.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. The Community-Based Environmental Protection and Enhancement Program was formed in 2002. However, CPEP Company Limited was formed in 2008. The program's initial mandate included creation of opportunities for the development of small businesses, the expansion of employment opportunities for the benefit of semi-skilled and unskilled citizens within their local communities, and the empowerment of communities to protect and improve the condition of the physical environment. CPEP Company Limited focuses on environmental protection, enhancement, and beautification in service areas known as environmental work areas, or EWAs. At the community level, CPEP seeks to enlighten communities on the need to improve and protect the environment. The program is organized on the basis of contractual work in EWAs, where contracting companies are responsible for recruiting and managing workers to achieve targets. The program also presents the opportunity for contractor and employee development. In order to achieve our goals, CPEP facilitates the community via the following programs: CORE, Disaster Emergency Response, then Animal Recovery, and the Marine Division. The CPEP Limited continues to strive to be the premier environmental protection company, aiding in fostering national pride at the community level, and remains committed to its mandate of environmental protection and enhancement. The period under review, however, is well before the time of this current management. However, on coming aboard, this management was asked to return the program to its original mandate. We are therefore thankful for the opportunity to appear before the review committee and to discuss the business of CPEP.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eddy. Could you tell this committee how long you have been general manager?
My appointment was in July, so it's just short of 5 months, Chairman.
And the rest of your team, have they all been newly appointed, or have they been there before?
Mr. Chairman, they have all been newly appointed.
You want to tell us how long they have been there as well?
Yes. I think with the exception of David Roberts, the rest of the team would have been around the same time, just roughly about 5 months in the company. David Roberts is 3 months in the company.
3 months, okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, you know, there's something called continuity in administrations, and the records would be there so you can do the necessary research and, to the best of your ability, assist the committee. We don't have the power as yet to summon all boards or all management. But if I may begin, I would like to quote, in accordance with Part 1, Section 4, on page 37 of the Financial Regulations, and I quote, "An accounting officer shall be responsible for ensuring that A, the financial business of the state for which he is responsible is properly conducted, and B, the public funds entrusted to his care are properly safeguarded and are applied only to the purposes intended by Parliament." End of quote. I'm directing this question to the Permanent Secretary. How does the Permanent Secretary, as the accounting officer, ensure accountability and transparency in performing your role and responsibility in monitoring this enterprise called CPEP, to ensure that the proper system of accounting as prescribed by the Treasury is established and maintained? How do you ensure, or how do you exercise supervision over the receipt of public revenue? And how do you make proper provision for the safekeeping of public money? I would like the Permanent Secretary to share with this committee, in accordance with the financial regulations of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, as the accounting officer, how you are able to accomplish and ensure these areas that I've mentioned are sustained and maintained and promoted.
Thank you for the question, Chairperson. I would answer that question in a general sense because the CPEP Company Limited was shifted to the purview of the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government on August 25th of 2016. So I will not be able to give general details about the period under review, which is 2009 to 2014. But as an accounting officer, generally we ensure that we have a close working relationship with the entities under our purview. We look at estimates of expenditure, allocations, and we usually ask all our state companies to provide monthly expenditure accounts and records. We also have meetings with our state enterprises, of which there are 3 in the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. At times, we share circulars which have been issued by the Ministry of Finance in terms of systems and accounting controls with our CEOs, who would in turn share it with the chairman of their boards. To ensure accountability and transparency, we seek to ensure that all proper guidelines which govern our operations in the public service of Trinidad and Tobago are communicated to the persons in charge in the form of the CEO or general manager in this case, as well as they would convey this information to the boards. We also periodically do site visits with some of our entities. We have a new relationship with CPEP, so we are not as far advanced as we are with our other state enterprises. But we seek to ensure that there is a working relationship with all our entities. And there are 3 state enterprises under the purview of the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. So we look forward to working closely with the CPEP board and management as we move forward 2016 into 2017.
Do you make available the appropriate circulars and documents to those state entities, enterprises that would fall under the purview of your ministry? Would that include the state enterprises performance monitoring manual?
Yes, whether we do it in hard copy or direct them to the website, yes, we ensure that it is known. Also, the Audit and Exchequer Act, and there are certain circulars which we receive from the Auditor General's Department on conflict of interest. So anything which I feel would be relevant to the management of their operations, we ensure that it's communicated.
Well, seeing that you're new on the block, as you would say, just a few months ago, having this entity being placed under your jurisdiction, have you been able thus far to have meetings with the board of directors of that organization, along with the management, to at least work out your vision, direction, and mandate for this organization, given what you would know of those things, and at the same time to do a review of where the organization is at. Now that you are in charge of the overall accounting function as the accounting officer, have such a meeting been held? And as you're on that matter, could you share with us, as the permanent secretary, whether you are aware of the mandate of CPEP, seeing that it is now under your purview? What is the mandate of this organization?
Okay, I'll take that question in parts. The board of CPEP reports to the minister. The management reports to the permanent secretary. I'm aware that meetings were held between the former Minister of Rural Development and Local Government and the then board within the past 3 months. I, as well as my accounting staff, met with the management of CPEP about a month ago to get an overview of what is the nature of their operations, any issues or challenges they may have which would impact on their service delivery, as well as accounting matters, matters of records and public documents which may or may not have been accessible to them, bearing in mind that they are also new. So we had such a very productive meeting about a month ago, and I'm not sure if this committee is aware, we are also responsible. Actually, we give funding to CPEP in Tobago, and we propose to meet with CPEP Tobago in short order as well, probably in early January. So that is part 1 and 2 of the question. In terms of the mandate, I'm aware of the original mandate of CPEP, and I'm also aware of how this mandate has shifted over time into construction, and they have assisted the health sector in constructing a few of their health centers. They have worked with the Ministry of Works, which is clearly a move away from the original mandate of community beautification and entrepreneurship of small contractors. Originally, CPEP the mandate was to create small contractors who would stay in the program for 3 years and then graduate into their own private business and have new players on the block. But the records have shown that that has not happened. Former minister had given them a directive to return to the original mandate, but we are currently working out the mechanics of achieving this. Also, in light of the cut in funding that we received in 2016-17, which would impact any plans and the direction of CPEP.
Thank you very much, Minister. I want to now go to the investment division before I allow my colleagues to intervene. Now, according to this manual called State Enterprises Performance Monitoring Manual, the Investments Division is responsible for executing the investment policy as prescribed by Cabinet. Accordingly, the mandate of the division includes oversight, monitoring, and where necessary, the rationalization of government's equity holdings in commercial enterprises. The division acts on behalf of the Minister of Finance, Corporation Sole, and carries out the corporate function. This includes representation of the minister at shareholders' meetings, establishment of new enterprises, and rationalization of the investments portfolio of the shareholder. I want to ask the representatives here, is there any additional support provided to CPEP and other state enterprises when there's a change of government or administration? And what is the role of the investments division in ensuring oversight and accountability in state enterprises? I'd like to have some clarification on these two areas. Representatives of the investments division, please.
Okay. The support that the state enterprises get when there's a change in administration is, well, we ask them to, in terms of corporate governance, to follow the monitoring manual in the setting up of the various committees of the boards to make sure that there's clear separation. Like the chairman cannot be on the tenders committee, right? And we ask them to liaise with us on any issues they may have. In addition, well, we, at the request of the companies, we go in and hold like something like a little workshop with the company on roles and responsibility of the board of directors, giving them an overview of the corporate governance aspect of companies. Now, in terms of part 2, how we monitor, but the companies are required to submit a number of reports to the investments division. It ranges from board minutes to the financial statements to monthly reports, cash flow reports. So that through those reports, we monitor the operations and the governance structure of the state enterprises. I don't know if I captured.
As it relates also to the whole issue of oversight and accountability, how does the investments division carry out that responsibility when it comes to state entities, state enterprises? Because you do have an oversight responsibility according to the manual that is before us. So we would like to know, as a committee, how do you execute that function to ensure that these entities do not become rogue entities, since you are responsible for their oversight and ensuring that there's proper accountability as well. So we'd like to get some clarification on the role of the Investments Division in this regard. Unless we are reading the manual wrong, but we are clear what we have read so far.
Chair, in terms of the oversight that the Investments Division has over the state enterprises, as per what is written in the manual, that oversight is how to put it, is stemmed by just what we, in terms of our requests from them, what they are mandated according to this, which is not legally binding. So that's the first thing we need to get clear, that this is not a legally binding document. So we just request that information is sent, certain information that Ms. Mohammed would have already stated what information is sent. Once that information is sent, that information goes to different officers who will analyze that information, input that information into a database and have that information stored. Anything that is outside of the policy of the Ministry of Finance, the officers would, as I said, would analyze and report to the Permanent Secretary and the Minister of Finance these breaches, if you were to say, in policy. The company would then be written to, and at that point we hope that they would make the necessary changes and get back in line with the policy of the ministry.
All right. We know that, you could just take off your manual. We know the manual is not legally binding. We are clear on that. But we are also clear that your responsibility in carrying out oversight duties to ensure that, as Mrs. Mohammed said, that you don't have a chairman sitting down as the chairman of the tenders committee. You said that. But we have read in newspapers reports where a chairman of a state enterprise or statutory body somewhere was both chairman as well as chairman of the tenders committee. And so we want to know whether, as a investments division, and I think it was a state entity, state enterprise, whether when these things happen, whether these people are properly schooled before they take up their roles, whether they are fully aware and acquainted with the manual, even though it is not legally binding, but there are some guiding principles that you cannot violate, even though they are not legally binding. Okay? So I raised that in passing, but I recognize my colleague would like to raise a question, because I have one final area before I allow my colleagues to intervene. Dr. Gopi Singh, please.
Thank you very much. Members of the committee, welcome, and of course of the Investments Division. What we are reviewing today is 29 to 2014. And we basically have been looking at audited financial statements to a major extent to look at areas of strengths, areas of weaknesses. Could you give us an appreciation, if you do have it, who conducted the audited statements from 2009 to 2014, including, if you can, for 2015? Who would have conducted the audited statements for CPEP over this period of time? That's the first question. Could you answer that?
Through the chair, I'll ask the finance manager to respond.
Hello, good morning, everyone. During the years 2009 to 2011, the auditors at CPEP Company Limited was PKF.
Who is that?
PKF, Panel Foster.
Right.
Through the years 2012 to 2014, Hardy's conducted the audits of CPEP.
Who?
And
What's the name of that organization?
Hardy's Chartered Accountants.
Hardy's?
Hardy's Chartered Accountants.
211 to 214?
Yes, they also conducted the audit for 2015 as well.
That's a private company.
Yes, it is.
Has any audit been done for 2015?
Yes, the audit for 2015 is currently in draft and awaiting approval from the Board of Directors.
All right. The audit in 2011, 2014, what was the cost of the audit for these 3 years, if you can give us an idea?
That I do not have readily available.
But on average, how much you would pay per year for it?
Maybe approximately 85,000 a year.
For each one of these audits?
Yes.
Are these audits now public?
The audits were published. 2014 was actually published in September of 2015, last year.
It was published?
Yes, it was.
September 2015?
Yes.
All right. Could you, while you're on it, could you help me and help the committee? Do you have a, GM, do you have a Miss Donovan working with you all still? Or has she resigned?
It's we had a Mr. Donovan.
Rondell Donovan.
Rondell Donovan. He has resigned.
He has resigned?
Yes.
With effect from when?
16th the 16th of October of November 2016.
Do you have an understanding of, did he give a reason for his resignation? What was the reason? Was he asked to resign, or did he resign on his own?
He resigned on his own.
On his own?
Yeah.
So October 2016?
November 2016.
He resigned. Okay. Could you help us now? This is for the general public through us. 2002 CPEP was conceptualized, and 2008 with the CPEP Company Limited was formed, correct? I know you were just 5 months, but generally you would have some research going back to understand the way forward. Do you have any appreciation of the amount of workers and contractors that started in 2009 or 2008 and through the years from 2008 to 2014? That's the first thing, if you just jot it down. What was the budgetary allocation per year from the various ministries to you all, 2008 to 2014? If you have 2015, that would be helpful. How many contractors were there in 2008, and how many do you have, let's say, 2015, 2016? And how many are there for 1 year, or 2 years, or 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years? Could you give us the names of the contractors over the period of time? That I know you would not have that information now, but if you'd be kind enough to send that for us. But if you could give us a ballpark figure this morning on those issues, if you'd be kind enough to.
Now, in responding, may I also advise that you may give a ballpark figure, but you would probably need to put those things in writing so they can be more accurately reflected. And I want to direct that matter to the finance manager, because you give a ballpark figure of 85,000, which is on record. But I would like you to really put in writing what was the exact figure.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Mr. Eddie?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Again, we're taking your advice. We'll provide these figures in writing because we don't have exact figures. I believe in our 2008 to 2014, there was between 134 contractors, and which rose to roughly about 251 in 2014. We are currently carrying 261 contractors in CPEP. So those are just rough numbers. I don't have them specific by years, but that's how the program increased in terms of the amount of contractors to CPEP.
Well, hand in hand with the amount of contractors, some contractors have 40 people, 20, 30 people, 50 people, 60 people working with them. Could you give us an appreciation of how many were employed over a period of time?
I can tell you how many workers we currently had, but in terms of which contractors we'd have had, we had 6. They were divided into various teams for each contractor. There are some contractors that have a combination of some 6 teams. Each team is composed of 10 workers. They would have a 6-team, a 4-team, a 3-team. Some contractors have 3 teams. Some contractors have 6 teams. So there's really no standardization in terms of the way the contractors are set out in the EWAs. So we'd have, again, to provide that in writing so that we can tell you exactly specifically which contractors in which EWAs are carrying 6 teams and 4 teams. So we do have combinations.
So you'll give us that for the 6 years, 29, each one of the years, how many contractors, how many workers, and so on?
Yes.
And how many districts that they were supervising?
That's right.
Okay, just...
Before you continue,
yeah, go ahead.
Just clarify again for us, WA means what?
EWA, Environmental Work Area.
Or EWA?
Yes.
Environmental Work Areas.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Your original mandate was environmental protection and enhancement. SWIMCOL also does some environmental protection and taking care of the environment. Have you had any meetings or considered meeting with SWIMCOL and seeing whether there is duplication of efforts or whether there are clear-cut areas for enhancement of the community? Because sanitation is an important area for enhancement. And has there been any thinking on that so far with your new team? Or have you seen any evidence of that being done in the past?
Through the chair, we've met with SWIMCOL, and we have one of our team members who actually worked with SWIMCOL in the past. We've not seen any duplication because I believe SWIMCOL handles mainly the dump sites. We spoke with them very recently in meetings. We are not seeing any duplications of efforts. CPEP is doing more of in terms of the core, the cutting of the grass, the clearing of the highways. We are working with the Ministry of Works and Transport. We are doing the bus route. We are doing some areas that were previously done by private contractors. So we have not specifically, in the time that we've been there, seen any kind of duplication of efforts between ourselves and SWIMCOL.
All right. May I suggest that you look at the whole question of refuge collection or refuge in different communities, because it's an eyesore in many communities. So while you keep the environment with the grass and the vegetation clean, you attempt to do so. Whether SWIMCOL is doing anything to enhance the community by collecting the refuge properly, I think this is something that you all need to critically look at, because the national community complains bitterly about that. And to make our country clean, not only vegetation clean, you should look at the refuge situation across different communities. Yeah. Go ahead, Chair.
I just had one area I wanted to clarify before coming for second rounds, but I allowed my colleague to go. But I just want to complete my final area of interest here. Now, in reviewing the audited financial statements of CPEP to determining whether policy is being carried out efficiently, effectively, and economically, some challenges have emerged and were identified in these reports, audited financial statements, for the period 2009 to 2014. I'll give you some examples. The lack of internal controls, procedures, and policies. The lack of inventory control. The absence of a fixed asset registry. The absence of measurable targets, the lack of a comprehensive performance regime, the absence of a risk management plan and process that would include, among other things, risk identification, evaluation of the probability and impact of risk, risk mitigation, monitoring, and review. Another area that came out of these reports, audited reports, was an absence of procurement policy and the lack of maintenance of proper records. Permanent Secretary, I want you to pay attention to this. A lack of maintenance of proper records. Now, in light of what I've just identified as challenges, our committee is desirous of hearing from each team represented here today, stakeholders, solutions. We are interested in solutions for overcoming the challenges that I have highlighted coming out of the audited financial statements. That's the first thing I would like to get from you. Secondly, we would like you to provide us with a copy of the mandate of the company. We in this mandate talk about mandate and mandate. We want a concrete copy of the mandate of the CPEP before us. Please make a copy of the mandate of CPEP available to our committee. And those two areas, I would like to have your input. It's very long in terms of the areas that we have extracted out of these reports for the period 2009 and to 2014. And as I said, we wanted to get some guidance as it relates to solutions from you as to the way forward. How can we deal with those? How do we plug these leaks? How do we deal with those cracks that the system apparently seem to be experiencing as identified in the audited financial statements for the period 2009 to 2014. Those are my initial interventions. I have several other interventions to make, but I would like you to consider those areas, and you can respond now or you can respond later on in the proceedings, because it's a listing I've given you, but I want to get some possible solutions. You see, at the end of the day, when we are submitting our report to the Parliament, we have findings and we have recommendations, but we want you to be part of the recommendations. We want you to be part of the process, so we want solutions coming from you. It must not only come from the members of the committee. We want to hear what you would want to advance so we can consider as a committee. So when we are reporting to the Parliament on CPEP, we will come up with concrete recommendations which will have your support for implementation. So could you share with us initially, and maybe later on you can put in writing, your thinking on what I've just submitted. And then I'll go to the Honorable Mr. David Small, and then we will come back to Dr. Tim Gopi Singh. So, Mr. Eddie?
Mr. Chairman, we out of those audits, we had 34 recommendations that we had seen, of which 22 had been implemented. We are, as a management team, putting things in place in order to fill those cracks. We have already put a company risk register in place to manage the risk of the company. We do have a list of fixed assets. I can go down the list and sort of give you some ideas, but all of those things that you have mentioned, there is a procurement process in the company, given the size of the purchase. That has all been set up by the committee, the board committee, and we follow those processes to the T now. So as a new management, we have looked at some of these areas in terms of doing our review of the company, and we have started already to implement a number of the recommendations and put things in place to ensure that it does not continue to follow the pattern. We have looked at the overall HSE system, and we've made some changes to that, keeping in mind that we want to ensure that our employees are at risk because they work at the side of the roads, the roadways and highways. We want to make sure that they are now reporting things like near misses so that we can capture those things very early before an incident actually happens or somebody gets hurt or killed. So we are, as a new management, have been looking at all of those specific areas that you mentioned, and we have been putting things in place in order to be able to do that. We are also measuring the performance of contractors. We've just developed a system to measure the performance of contractors. We're also using the technology to know where all the contractors are on a daily basis, and we have daily reports coming in to be able to do that. For the DAT, we are using GPS technology for that to be able to tell where they are so that when the calls come in, that we are going to be able to find them, to put them into areas. We are setting up a call line so that if there are any issues, because during disasters or anything that would have happened, particularly like the issue in Toko, usually CPEP is a first responder. So we have the disaster emergency response team. So we are putting things in place to make those things more efficient. We've just had a...
Just a minute, interrupt you. You see, when you say GPS technology, I might know what you're talking about, but you're talking to the public at the moment.
Global.
You're going, people are listening to you in England right now,
Okay.
and different parts of the world.
Yes.
So could you just identify and just expand and elaborate when you talk about GPS technology in the context of this locating your contractors? Just elaborate and explain and expand so people understand exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. GPS is Global Positioning Satellite, which is able to identify. It's a technology that is used in a lot of instruments now, including your cell phones, so you can actually identify exactly where someone is. If you have through the GPS, I can tell which area you're in, which road, which house you're in through that technology. So we are using that technology to be able to follow our teams out in the environment.
All right. Well, what I can do is to put in writing
Yes.
all those challenges and what you have been doing to implement them thus far. That's one. Could you provide us with a copy of the mandate of this company, and when can we receive that copy of the mandate of the company, please?
We will provide a copy. We would have that to you by the end of next week.
Okay, thank you. I will now turn to Mr. David Small, and then after we have a question from Dr. Gopi Singh, and we go to Mr. the Honorable Foster, Mr. David Lee. David Small.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to join in this session. Once again, welcome to everyone this morning. I want to start by seeking clarification, because we've spoken this morning about the fact that the mandate for the Permanent Secretary Bascom was very clear that the mandate of the organization is there's a position now where you go back to the original mandate, where it's about building entrepreneurship. I've noted you have Mr. Roberts, who is the Business and Entrepreneurship Development Manager. So I suppose he will be a key player in this. My question is, you indicated you have 261 contractors on now. Have those contractors been advised, or what is the plan to advise them that the plan is back, the focus of the program is now back to its original moorings, and that the length of time for their services will be 3 years? What is the process to that? Have you advised them? Do you plan to advise them? How are you planning to treat to that? Because if I accept what has been presented by the Permanent Secretary, that you're back to the original moorings, then the original moorings means that no contractor should be on for more than 3 years. So could you help me with where that process is?
I'm back to the original moorings of the program, but back to the mandate, is really getting CPEP back to, just as you mentioned, about the business entrepreneurship and about being able to graduate contractors out of the program after 3 years by providing the necessary training and assistance so that they become business people. We have not yet, in terms of the core contractors, we have not made an official representation to them about going back to the original mandate, because we have contractors that would have been in the program in excess of 5 years currently. Contractors, we do have contractors that have an extended 3-year contract beyond the 5 years. So there is a bit of challenge. That is something that the board and management is dealing with now as to how do we know, because contractors are supposed to be out of the program in 3 years. We now have for an extended, if they stay in the program, they would be there for an extended period of 8 years. So we'd have to make sure that those contractors understand that they are getting the relevant training that is required so that when they do exit the program, that they are going to be up to speed in terms of becoming business people. I can't speak much about the years would have gone previously, but I know what our mandate is to ensure through business entrepreneurship and development officer that those contractors are trained and that they become independent contractors at the end of the 3-year period.
Thank you, Mr. Eddie. One bit inside of your response is jumped out at me when you mentioned use the phrase core contractors. Yes. And I don't like that phrase, because given that we're operating with a clear new mandate, there should be nothing to describe anyone as a core contractor. You could probably say overdue for leaving contractors. I prefer you use that, because I am always clear that we are running an enterprise, we are using state funds, and if there's a clear mandate from the state, I noted in your document you provided, I think somewhere in the document, one of your responses was that during a particular period, 2010 to 2015, you didn't receive any policy guidance from the government. And so I have a question on that about, well, what was happening? But you can't answer that because you weren't there. So let's park that. I'm saying now you have clear guidance, clear policy direction. I don't believe that it's appropriate to be talking about core contractors. I'm not saying to put people out of work, but by the same context, I'm sure if you do an advertisement for contractors to do work, you may be surprised at how many responses you would get. So I would like for you and your team to focus on that. Mr. Chairman, if you permit me, I have a question also, Mr. And could you advise me, do you have a board in place at all? Any members of a board? What do you have in place in terms of governance?
The chairman resigned from the board, so we had a deputy chairman and 4 members of the board. So we do have a board in place at this point in time. Okay.
Do you have an internal audit function?
We had an internal audit function. We are currently now on the market trying to recruit an internal auditor.
For how long has the company been without an internal audit function?
Good morning to the committee and chair. I believe it's over 9 months we have been without an internal audit function. However, to piggyback on what Mr. Eddie said, we currently have an approved org structure that is before the board awaiting approval. And a position that is part of that organizational structure is an internal auditor consultant. So once we get that organizational structure approved, then we would move forward to employ that consultant in that capacity.
I am deeply concerned by that. Can I ask another question? Does your board have a functioning audit committee?
Yes, the answer to that is yes.
So the board has an audit committee, but in my understanding, for the audit committee to function, you need the reports from the internal auditor. So that, for me, there's that point. If for 9 months you have no internal auditor, you may have a board audit committee, but they almost can't function. So that for me, an enterprise that is getting several $100 million of taxpayers' money without an internal audit function is something that is a crisis, because the horse is probably bolting through the gate as we speak, because no one is able to properly track. And I think this should concern the permanent secretary also. We're not talking a little bit of money. And let me, if you permit, Mr. Chairman, I have a question. The Parliament team sent out a question, and one of the questions asked was, have you ever done a value for money exercise in the organization? Again, this predates you. The response was, and I use the word deliberately response. The response was, we've conducted a cost-benefit analysis. And I want to stick a pin there, because our cost for money, our value for money exercise and our cost-benefit analysis, two different items. Our cost-benefit analysis looks to try to understand, okay, we spent money, have we gotten benefits for spending the money? Okay, and that's largely what a cost-benefit analysis does. Did we spend the money? We spend the money. A value for money exercise looks at efficiency, effectiveness, and one of the key factors in there is something called equity. There's 4 factors in doing a full value for money audit. And I would suggest to the management that this is something that you should do, because I suppose most people are aware the country is in a state where we have a constraint on available resources, and that we should be trying to maximize the use of all the resources that are available. And to the extent that CPEP is doing good work and is expending public monies, a value for money audit should be conducted annually, in my respectful view. I have one more question, Mr. Chairman, if you permit me. I've spent a fair portion of the night, forgive me, looking at your accounts, and several things jumped out at me. And I have a question, and again, I look through so perhaps it is unfair for the current finance manager to answer, but I'd like your professional opinion. In my observation of the accounts from 2009 to 2014, something jumped out at me. Every income and expenditure statement, there's a total zero balance. If you receive $464,235,000,037, you spend exactly that amount every year. If that for me is an anomaly. I have analyzed accounts in various places, and I've never seen where income and expenditure match perfectly every year for a period of almost 6 years. So that I'm saying this in front of the investment division and the permanent secretary. Something is wrong. That suggests to me that something is wrong inside of the accounts. Because I think it's mathematically impossible. We are paying salaries, wages, contractors, all of these various things. And then you get subvention from the government and you have contracts with other things to get money, and it balances to zero. No, zero surplus, zero deficit every year. I would like your professional opinion from the finance manager. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot.
Thank you very much. It was something that jumped out at me as well when I reviewed the audits for the past couple of years. I did engage in conversation with Hardee's with respect to how he accounted for it. He provided an explanation for it, which I can provide in writing, so at least you'll have a better understanding of what was his response to us having a zero net profit every year.
Every year for 6 years? Because I saw some of the years with Parliamentary Clerks also.
Yes.
So something in there. I am not an accountant, but I would like your opinion. Have you ever, as a person involved in accounts, seen where income and expenditure match perfectly to the cent? Never seen it. So I just wanted to make sure I'm not being facetious. Mr. Chairman, I'm stopping now. I have a few more questions, but I will allow other members to have the floor.
Just quickly, indulgence. Yeah. You have audits for 2009, 2010. Were they done by Parliamentary Foster? Yes? And 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, done by whom?
No. The audits for years 2009 to 2011 were done by PKF, Parliamentary Foster.
Right.
It's the audits from 2012 to 2015 that were done by Hardee's.
2012, 2013, 2014.
And 2015 as well.
So have you the 2015 report available?
It's in draft.
It's in draft.
Yeah, it's before the board for approval.
All right. So, but we have in Parliament here now 2012, 13, 14 done by Hardee's.
Yes.
And 2015 is being done by Hardee's now.
As well, yes.
And it's in a draft. Can you tell us whether while Hardee's was doing that audit, was there any person added to that firm to become an auditor while that audit was being done? Are you aware of that?
No, I'm not sure. Added to Hardy's or added to...
Added to Hardy's. While the firm was doing the audit, was there someone added on to as an auditor in the firm while the audit was being done?
Not aware of anything.
And are you aware that someone who was a consultant to CPEP became an auditor during the audit of 2015 with Hardy's?
No, I'm not.
You're not aware
that
of
information was
Could
not
you
given
check
to us.
and verify whether that is so and provide an answer for us in writing?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just 2 or 3 small questions. What is the state of the process used to engage the new management team of CPEP? The new management team of CPEP, what is the process used? And in the remuneration of the new management team, could you give us in writing the full remuneration package of the new management team and whether the recommendations of Salary Review Commission, which helps in the recommendations across the line, were they taken into consideration? If you have answers to that now, we'll appreciate it. And what process was used to engage the risk management company? You have a risk management company now? What process was used? And what is the mandate of this risk management company? If you want to answer any of those now, we'll appreciate it. If not, we'd like them in writing.
With regards to the process, I was engaged to hire this current management team. That process was led by the Arthur Lockjack School of Business, which was approved by the board of the company. And so based on that, all the members that are sitting here were hired through that process.
Do you know what was the cost of hiring the Arthur Lockjack team to hire this risk management company?
Currently, we don't have a risk management company that is engaged with CPEP Company Limited. We have a risk register, which we mentioned previously.
So you're telling us that you asked the Arthur Lockjack School of Business to engage, to determine the process for hiring a risk management team. Did the Arthur Lockjack School complete its work to advise CPEP on this new risk management team?
I'm not sure that the Arthur Lockjack was engaged for a risk management company.
What were they engaged for?
They were as far as I remember, they were to review the strategic plan and provide a way forward. I have seen evidence of a review of there was a 2012 to 2015 strategic plan that we met in the company. And I believe that one of the remits was to review that plan and provide a way forward for CPEP. Some of the recommendations would have come out of that would have been the standardization of the team, so to get away from the various 6, 4, and 3, that they would have one standard type of team for CPEP. There was also...
help us elucidate when was that Arthur Lockjack School engaged for that consultation? What is the cost of that consultation?
Okay.
Where are they at the moment? Have they completed their recommendations to you as a board or the management? And what were the major recommendations that they made? And as far as the risk management company, did you engage them as part of that to assist you in getting a risk management company?
I'll have to provide those responses in writing. I'm not aware that they were asked to provide a risk management company. We have developed an in-house risk register for the company so that we can start looking at the risk. But I'll provide the answer in writing as to whether or not they were engaged for.
Right. Thank you very much.
Well, please, and we too will submit those questions to you for responses. I now ask Mr. Foster Cummings to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, members of the CPEP management team, investment division, and PS. I want to go back to the discussion concerning the core function of CPEP, and I note that the general manager did indicate to us in his opening that the core function involve employment creation, enhancement and maintenance of the environment, and job creation. Am I correct? And in some of my readings here, I realize that there has been or had been some shift from that core function into areas of project management and general contracting. Before I go on to my other questions, could you advise us as to, in a general sense, what that shift involved and what were some of the projects that CPEP became involved in outside of its corporations?
Through the chair, the shift involved building, CPEP built a community center. CPEP was also doing road paving and box drains. So that was really outside of the core business of the company at the time. Hence the reason that we are now talking about returning to the original mandate.
Are there currently projects of that nature being undertaken by CPEP?
No, I forgot to mention the health sector initiative, which was another one. CPEP is no longer doing any of those types of projects.
Is CPEP still involved outside of its core mandate in engaging in tendering for contracts in the state sector?
Through the business development unit, one of the things that CPEP does is that in the business development department, CPEP does engage either private or government entities as part of what we do in terms of earning income for the company. So that is still ongoing as part of the business development. There were several contracts that we met there, most of which would have expired in 2015, 2016, and I believe we have engaged one or two companies. Let me just let the business development manager give a bit more clarification on those specifics.
Thank you. Good morning. Through you, Chairman. The business development unit of the CPEP Company Limited engages both public and private entities, as Mr. Eddy said. Please pardon my voice. I have the cold. And some of our clients include, of course, some clients in the private sector, but in the state sector, we do some work for Custard, for example, and also ETech and a few others. The contracts that we do have with these entities, we have won successfully. Similarly, we do receive letters from some state agencies when we are unsuccessful. So as a company, we try to practice what we preach. We are here to support the entrepreneurs and ensure that they develop and are able to operate companies that are sustainable after they have left the program. And we too are doing our part to ensure that persons in the general population are aware of the services that we offer and engage us once they are interested in doing so.
But let me just ask, if it is that the CPEP is a business incubator and you're trying to move small business people into becoming more established, and CPEP itself is on the market, isn't that a conflict? Isn't it CPEP then competing with the very people involved in the incubator program that might be tendering for those same projects? Isn't it not likely that you might find on a project that CPEP, the company, is tendering for, that one of the participants in the incubator program might be tendering for that same project?
Allow me through you, Mr. Chair, to clarify the process then. CPEP does not have any employees who would engage in beautification or landscaping, first and foremost. Those persons who are engaged to do that work is the contractors. So any work that is secured by the CPEP Company Limited is in essence done by a CPEP contractor. So our role in the business development unit is that in the work that we secure, we would now be able to engage the contractors to do that work, because we don't do that work in-house. We don't have the capacity, nor are we interested in doing that ourselves. We do that through the contract labor. So we get the jobs, but it is more a facilitation. Now, the development of the business incubator initiative will be supporting the entrepreneurs in terms of guiding them in the way that they tender for contracts, in terms of how they price their goods, how they price their services, how they operate and do quotations, etc. So we are getting the work in the first instance. ensuring that these contractors do the work up to standard. The work is verified by our field officers through our operations department, but in essence, the work is done by contractors. We don't actually do the work.
Okay, before I move off that point, I just want some clarity. The CPEP tenders for a project, let's say the maintenance of the highway, for instance. You already have contractors engaged. You have 261 contractors engaged in your regular EWAs, yes? And the CPEP now tenders and gets a contract from the Ministry of Works to maintain the highway. How do you determine which of your contractors in your core program would execute those works that you get based on tendering for other works? For instance, how would you determine, after getting that contract for the maintenance of the highway, do you subcontract that to contractors already in your program, or is that just given to them as part of their regular responsibilities?
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. That work would be done. There are a number of factors that we'll consider in terms of assigning teams to that type of project. As of now, the teams that would be assigned to those type of projects would be contractors who are engaged with CPEP already. One major factor would be geography. So we would look at teams that are in close proximity to the job site first and foremost, and also we will.
Let me just clarify.
Sure.
I'm trying to determine whether the contractors are paid separately for those works, or does it form part of your regular program, your core program?
That is determined on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, I get you.
Based on the location.
Let's move along.
Sure.
In 2010, there was a general manager of CPEP, Mr. Clark. Does your records reflect that? Can you tell us, and that person was replaced as general manager around that time, human resource manager. When did Mr. Clark exit CPEP?
I'm unable to provide you with a specific date of when he exited, but I could provide that at a further date.
So could you give us that information in writing, please?
Yes,
I can.
I can.
To know at what point did Mr. Clark exit the position of general manager? If he stayed on with CPEP, in what capacity did he stay on? And what was the remuneration received during 2010 at the time he exited the company? In addition to that, what was the procedure utilized for the recruitment of the person who replaced him as general manager? What was the process utilized? And what was the salary received by that person and the members? That would also go for the full management team during the period under review. My next question is, I'm aware that the CPEP head office was located in Shoguanas, which is a central location, easily accessible by people coming from different parts of the country. Where's your head office now?
St. Madeleine. Head office is located in St. Madeleine.
Can you tell us now, or would you like to, can you provide in writing, what was the rationale for shifting the office from Shoguanas to St. Madeleine? Was it a cost-saving initiative? Can you provide that to us in writing?
Yes.
Why the office was moved from a central location in Shoguanas to St. Madeleine in South Trinidad, South-ish Trinidad. Yes? Further, can you tell us what was the selection criteria, what was the process that was used to select these 261 contractors currently on the CPEP program? How would they engage? What was the advertisement? What was the process? How were they selected? Could you give us that in writing? All 261, because I realized that you had 134 contractors before. So that in fact the program almost doubled to 261. You had an increase of 127 contractors, and you now have 261. We'd like to know what was the process used to recruit these contractors, and give us the name of these contractors, please, and how long they've spent with the CPEP program. Could you also give a list of all the construction projects and all the non-core projects? I saw some of them here, but I'm sure this list is not a complete list. All the non-core projects engaged by CPEP during this period under review, both construction projects and projects that you would have managed on behalf of other ministries. I'd also like a breakdown in terms of the 261 contractors, which EWAs, you said that's environmental work areas, which environmental work areas these contractors are assigned to throughout Trinidad. I'll hold there for now till later on. Chairman, thanks.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask Mr. Eddie and maybe the permanent secretary, if the intention is to return CPEP to its original moorings. My colleague was asking about you competing for jobs either within the private sector or within the governmental sector. And you could at times be successful. Would you not see this as a contradiction? Do you see you are undermining the very small contractors, medium-sized contractors, who would have been competing for those very contracts in the government service or in the private sector, when your mandate, according to what we were told, is to treat with what you have. Train, graduate, let them get into business, get new ones, train, graduate. So you're expanding the business entrepreneurship class in the country. But if you are at the same time competing for contracts through your business development unit with the government and with the private sector, are you not seeing a contradiction in terms of your mandate as you have outlined this morning? Or do you see it complementary? Because I'm seeing a contradiction in terms of what you are supposed to be doing, and then you are actually competing with a small entrepreneur who ought to be seeking those contracts with the government. You are getting those contracts, and you are extracting from your very core the labor. And my colleague who spoke a short while ago did not indicate to us what was the process, what process was utilized. He said it is determined on a one-by-one basis, or we don't know if there is what process, what procurement process, what transparent process you engage in determining if this contractor or the other contractor would gain, let's say, the job that you would have just successfully gotten from the private sector or from the government. So, Mr. Eddie, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that as to whether you are violating and breaching your very mandate that you want to return to as you seek to expand and engage small entrepreneurs, in your operations, and just add to whatever you have already. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the way we saw it is that as part of developing the business entrepreneurship of the contractors, because we are helping. The idea was to train these contractors so that they understand fully how to apply for contracts outside of the CPEP contract, how to manage their accounts, how to do various things, how to get their staff. And the way we saw it is that in terms of being able to utilize the contractors, the current group of contractors, Part of the things we looked at was that we now have developed a process where we can actually evaluate contractors in terms of performance through some specific KPIs. And our idea was to use that as part of the way that we were able to choose contractors. So the ones that are developing a little bit faster than the others, that are coming on board, that are understanding the processes, that we would have then used those contractors to be able to do any of these private things that we would have gone out to bid for. We also had the idea that we would, if we saw an ad in the newspapers for a private contract, we can say to contractors, you know, there's an ad in the newspapers, this is what is required, bring the paperwork in, we have a development unit that will actually help you. So it was really graduating to that, so that we'll actually help you now be able to go out and bid for those contracts yourself, as opposed to CPEP, the company. So it was all part of what we saw in coming in as training and developing business entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And Mr. Eddy, that is the point I was trying to make, in that if you are involved in a business incubator, then what you want to do once there are projects out there to bid for, yes, is that you want to guide the participants in the incubator in terms of how they can properly tender for projects, how they can prepare these documents. And so your business development unit should really be guiding the contractors as to how they can prepare themselves to participate, instead of the CPEP company actually going out there and competing along with the persons who you should be holding their hand and getting them to graduate to a higher level. And that's the point I was trying to make.
All right. Well, I think that you got the point. I recognize Mrs. Kojo, Ms. Kojo, Shamfa Kojo.
Thank you.
And welcome, Ms. Kojo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the General Manager, through you, Mr. Chair, I know earlier in the year we would have discovered that over 80% of CPEP contractors had fallen behind or were not in compliance with making their statutory payments as it relates to national insurance, health surcharge, some for VAT and so on. I want to know what has been done to rectify the matter, and can you provide for us to date the number of contractors that are still behind as it relates to statutory payment, by how much, and what is being done to treat with the matter?
Mr. Eddy?
Yes, there was a significant amount of contractors that was failing to pay the statutory deductions. And based on the contract, actually, this should have been picked up a long time ago, because some were owing significant sums of money. And it states in the contract that if you miss 3 consecutive payments, then you have become non-compliant. So the first thing we did when we came in as a management was to utilize the contract to inform contractors that they were now non-compliant, and as stated in the contract, that their management fees would be withheld. That was done to all the contractors who were non-compliant at the time. Since that has happened, we also had a meeting with the National Insurance Board, informing them of what we found. And since that time, we have had maybe about half of that percentage or more have now gone ahead and paid their statutory deductions to bring themselves compliant.
So, to date, as we speak, what would you say roughly is the percentage of contractors that are compliant, that are fully compliant? Because the report shows that you have contractors who have not been in compliance up to 40 months, from 40 to 7 months. So where are we with that now?
Hi, through the chair. Good morning again. I believe when we came in, it was roughly over 150 persons this is just ballpark figures, right? That was non-compliant to date. I think it's less than half of that's actually compliant now. So we may have between maybe 70 to 80 contractors that's actually non-compliant at the moment. So it has significantly dropped over the last couple of months.
I'll tell you something. Moving from one something to 70 or 80 contractors might sound impressive, but it's not impressive or positive or beneficial to the worker who gets pregnant or gets ill.
Yes.
So I think we need to move to a place of 100% compliance. I trust and hope that you have regulations and rules to treat with this and not to endorse and encourage contractors who are not compliant. So please provide the necessary details as requested to us, and what are you doing or what have you done to treat with the matter.
Okay.
What would you recommend for rogue contractors, as Ms. Shamfa Kojo just said? If you have 150 contractors who were delinquent and denied people their rights in terms of NIS benefits because of their failure to comply with the NIS arrangements, and we were able to bring them down, as you said, to 70, we still have almost another 70 to 80 contractors who are rogue elements in the system and who have defied your directives to come up to scratch, to come up to compliant level, so that all workers who are employed with those contractors would be able to enjoy their benefits in accordance with the law and in accordance with their monetary contributions on a regular basis to this or that contractor. What would you recommend to this committee? Should we terminate those contractors who have been delinquent and who have persisted in their delinquency, even though you have made recommendations? Or would you say, allow them to continue as they are going, and they will soon, maybe in the next 3 years, meet their obligations to the NIB? We would like you to tell us what would be your recommendation, because we are very concerned.
Mr. Chairman, as per contract, had the previous management followed the contract to the letter, they would have exited those contractors. Unfortunately, it was allowed to perpetuate for a long time, for over an extended period. So as I said, we started to take the steps of following the contract. First thing we had to do was write to them and stop the management fee, inform them that they were non-compliant and stop the management fee. And then the next steps would have been to follow. We have requested legal advice as to how do we move forward, given the fact that these contractors have been allowed to be non-compliant in the excess of 3 years in some instances. So we are now awaiting legal advice in order to proceed. But I do say that had the contract been followed to the letter, they would have either become compliant immediately or they would have been exited from the program on the basis of the contract and non-compliance.
Are these contractors compliant in terms of income tax? I'm talking about the contractors, not the employees, because they get minimum wage levels. The contractors, do they pay, are they compliant with the income tax laws of our country? Do you have any evidence that they pay income tax to the taxpayers of this country, Inland Revenue Department?
Okay, hi again. With respect to the contractors, what our contract says is that they have to bring us because we actually pay the NIS and the health surcharge over to the contractors in terms of the amounts every fortnight and every month. What they are supposed to do, the contractors, they are then supposed to go and remit, well, obviously make the payments, and then remit back to us as a copy of the receipt so that we can match it off and agree that they are now in compliance with their contracts. With respect to the income tax, no, because of the contractors are all registered companies, that will be, we don't look at their income tax receipts because it's not part of what they're, in terms of the contract. It was not a contractual obligation for them to remit those things, but that is something that they, like BIR and I guess the contractors themselves would have to take up on their own.
I see. Yeah.
CPEP, in its operations, the workers and the contractors cut the vegetation that need to be cut along the highways and the roadways and so on. But I noticed that you have independent contractors who collect this vegetation. Yes, that CPEP have employed?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, how many are these independent contractors for just collecting the vegetation? And how much is paid, and how many contractors do you have there collecting vegetation after the CPEP workers have cut the vegetation? So you have a separate department for collecting, a separate company or companies, contractors for collecting the vegetation. Could you give us an estimate of the annual cost that CPEP has to pay to these contractors who are outside of the 261 contractors? How many contractors you have collecting vegetation? And how much money is paid to them? Because that's a separate area. We thought that CPEP was collecting the vegetation, but you seem to have independent contractors now collecting this vegetation and dumping it. So could you give us the amount of contractors employed? What is the cost on an annual basis for collecting this vegetation that is cut? You have any idea now?
Hi again, good morning. Currently we have approximately between 100 and 105 contractors that pick up the waste. On average, it costs us at least 1.6 million a month in payment for the services that they provide for us.
So it's 19 million approximately per year in collecting the vegetation.
Waste removal, yes, the waste removal.
Have you considered, instead of contracting that outside, and what is the accounting mechanism to determine the collection is running efficiently and effectively and cost effective and value for money? Because many times you would drive down and you would see garbage bags filled with material for 2 or 3 days. Now, do you not think that that should be a core component of CPEP? Why you have the contractors cutting the vegetation and not removing it? They should be able to be mandated to cut it and remove. And that should, so now when you separate that, it causes weaknesses and efficiency in the cleaning. So that's one. So 19 contractors make about 1.6 million per year. How many you said? How many contractors?
About 100.
100 contractors. This is something to consider. Now the garbage collection is put in garbage bags. This is not environmentally friendly because these garbage bags are dumped in the dumps. Can there be no other mechanism for collecting this without having to put these in this garbage bag? Sometimes you drive along and you see 100, 150 garbage bags. That is damaging the eco aspect of the environment, because a garbage bag takes years to decompose. And I want to suggest that you look at this immediately. And why can't you have a certain amount of trucks or vehicles? Have you considered getting some vehicles that could crush these vegetation and make it manure or a compost for sale subsequently? This is the thinking that needs to go into it. So you have one there cutting, another set of contractors collecting and dumping environmentally non-friendly garbage bags into their dump sites, which take years to decompose. So I want to advise or recommend that this be looked at immediately by your company. And why can't that be, everything be the core competence of CPEP? That's one. Two, the CPEP Maritime. How many beaches do you monitor and protect in terms of the CPEP Maritime environmental management? And are you aware of how many beaches and maritime sites across the country there are, and how much do you participate in cleaning up? What percentage do you participate in cleaning up? And the third area is the CPEP agriculture, for which I know was doing a very good job. Because if we are to be sustainable, agriculture has to play an important role. And would you not consider that the CPEP agriculture now continue to be a very significant part of your CPEP program and help with the national diversification and the sustainable development of the country? So could we get some comments from you, General Manager?
Yes, I'd let the operations manager take the first part of the question, because some of the things that the member is suggesting we have already started looking at. So let me just allow.
Through the chair, good morning. The CPEP company is already engaged in providing green waste to a number of farms in the Camuto, Valencia, Tabagate area. That's been ongoing. We came into a situation where we realized that composting should take place, and we have sent some equipment that was there for some time, some chippers, to be repaired, having taken on Vemcot as our provider. So that is taking place right now. In addition to which, we have engaged CARDI, that's the Caribbean Agricultural Research Development Agency, and they are providing us with expertise. We have already allocated a site to do composting on site. So that is going to be taking place shortly. On site at St. Madeleine. One of the few benefits of being there is that we have space to use to actually do composting.
So but if material is cut from Port of Spain?
No, only for those waste operators that are in close proximity to us will be dropping it.
Are you going to continue utilizing private contractors for collection?
It makes sense right now because of the spread of the program. If we were to engage in terms of hiring a number of purchasing a number of vehicles and trucks and so on to go all over the country, the maintenance costs alone would be astronomical. And by having waste removal operators, we have engaged in a number of systems to ensure that the waste is picked up properly and on time and efficient manner, in that the waste operator is linked to a particular contractor in the area, and the contractor signs off on documents for the waste that is collected. When you do see waste...
What's the method of auditing to make sure that there is no collusion to say that X amount of
that's where the field officer and the regional coordinator comes in.
And do you have a mechanism, an audit department within CPEP to determine on a daily basis 261 contractors cutting vegetation across the country and dumping them at the side of the road? Do you have that mechanism within CPEP for auditing that, and is it being done effectively and efficiently?
It is being done effectively and efficiently. As I said,
that's what you say. Can you show evidence of that to us, that on a monthly basis, or evidence to show that the auditing and that aspect is being done, and give us an idea of how many of these pieces of garbage across the road, if you have an auditing department, which you are paying for, has been collected and dumped properly by the contractors who are hired and paid for to collect these pieces, and so on. And just last issue, from a social perspective and from a health perspective, what steps have CPEP taken to protect X amount of workers on the roadside and when they want to use the washrooms and toilet facilities. How can a human being be subjected to that? They start to work from 6 in the morning to about 11 during the day and don't have available an area for toilet facilities and have to beg a neighbor or something. Could you make some comments on that? This is humanly unacceptable. And for years, this thing is going on from 2009 or whatever, 2008 to 2016. Could you respond to that?
Certainly. I'll start with the issue of using the toilets, if I may. The contractors usually provide transportation for their workers on site. If it is that it is a special project, we provide the transportation. We keep a vehicle on site, ensure that they are protected from the rain, and also ensure that there's close proximity to toilet facilities. Those are special projects, such as the North Coast Road and Ladeo and so on. It is really the contractor's responsibility to see to the needs of their workers. In the past, there was a system whereby, I'm talking 2003 now, there was a system whereby trucks with portable toilets on the tray would have been driving around to specific areas. It was not a very effective system. So, as to your next...
No, you haven't answered that, sir.
I haven't answered.
You have floated across the entire issue, okay, and it's unacceptable, your response. You have flip-flopped on the entire issue. Tell us what definite areas. You said it is left to the contractors. Mm-hmm. It's left to CPEP to monitor that. You are the responsible agency, and you have to ensure that the contractors provide that type of facility. What have you done about it? I know you all have come on 3 months and 5 months or 6 months, mm-hmm, but could you look into that? It's not humane.
Okay.
Yes.
And people getting wet into the rain and have to run and hide for shelter under somebody's home. That is unacceptable today's work standards.
Yeah, Mr. Eddy, I think Dr. Gopi Singh is suggesting that the CPEP should look into this issue. It's an issue that touches very, very seriously on the human condition. And we do not want to be going to and fro on this one. We would ask you to consider, and we would probably at our level make a recommendation to that effect. So consider it, and as I'm on the floor, I want you to consider whether contractors are meeting their financial commitment to the state insofar as income taxes are concerned. I would hate to think that contractors are receiving monies every month and they are not paying income tax. I pay income tax. All of us pay income tax. So we would like to know if that is taking place. And if it's not taking place, please advise us so we can make a recommendation to the CPEP company to take action in that regard. So we would want to get from you what is taking place. Okay?
I have one final question through you, Chairman. There have been some complaints in the public domain that CPEP no longer cleans drains and cut grass that is above a certain level. Can you tell us about that change in policy, if that is true?
That's not, there shouldn't be, CPEP cuts grass, and I don't know that we have a level that we go to. We have done areas that are quite, I've seen the CPEP crews on the Lady Young, trimming trees and stuff, so I'm not aware of that at all.
And what about cleaning drains?
Yeah. To the Chair, thanks again. The cleaning of drains is something that really does not fall under the mandate of CPEP, but we do it in certain areas, certain residential areas. That is a Ministry of Work operation, waterways, watercourses. But we have been receiving a number of requests to do it. And where it is safe, we do engage in it. Just to make a point on your question, if I may, Dr. Gopi Singh, you mentioned about the safety of workers, right? We work on the health of workers, but let me address the safety of workers. We have a health and safety unit, but we also ensure that when we are working on road verges, particularly for the highways and the major arteries of the road, that we engage the Ministry of Works to get the proper policing, the proper signage, and to ensure that the lane in many cases is blocked. And that is something we don't mess around with at all. That is in place each time. Thank you.
Yes,
Mr. Eddy, the waste contractors that were spoken about, who the waste collectors, is it the same philosophy behind these contractors? Are they part of an incubator system as well?
No, the answer to that is no. That's a separate, done under a separate contract, and it's really just they are assigned to contractors so that we are able to quickly remove the waste rather than it staying on the side of the road.
But I think also what Mr. Foster may be asking is that, are they contracted for a specific time? Just as all the original mandate that you are going back to, 3 years, and then you get graduated out of the program. Those persons who are collecting waste, are they following the same mandate? After 3 years, they are graduated out, or are they there permanently on the job 5, 6, 7, 8?
Yeah.
I think.
Okay, all right. The intention is to bring them as part of the program to graduate them after 3 years. That I was sort of responding from what we've seen, that they have also been in the program for an extended period of time.
All right, before small question, I have a question. Internal auditing, I want to get back to that. Internal auditing, to me, is the first line of defense in transparency, accountability, and good governance. So I would like to find out from Mr. Eddy and the Permanent Secretary, as well as the Investments Division of the Ministry of Finance, as stakeholders, are you comfortable? Are you happy? Are you satisfied with the situation where you have no internal audit function occurring in a very important institution and organization like the CPEP company for 9 consecutive months? What is the Investments Division doing about that if they are receiving monthly reports? What is the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government through the accounting officer doing about that? Because it is untenable for any organization spending millions and tens of millions of taxpayers' dollars every month to come and tell this committee that after 9 months, I do not have an internal audit function or unit in my organization. And it is unacceptable. And I really would like to get an explanation from the Investments Division of the Ministry of Finance and the Permanent Secretary in the Rural and Local Government Ministry, what is happening and what steps you all are going to be taken immediately to bring an end to this unfortunate situation. This is going to put extreme pressure on the external auditors in the final analysis. Because if you have no internal function, How are you going to monitor and ensure that there is no breaches, irregularities? What systems you have in place to avoid fraud, for example, from occurring? So I would really like to ask the Investments Division representatives to help us, to guide us, to give us their recommendation as to how do we address this emergency that is occurring at CPEP, and also the Permanent Secretary. Give us your solution and your recommendation to deal with this emergency. First, please, the Investments Division.
The internal audit function within any organization will be based on the org structure of that organization. Internal audit within the state sector is generally, I would say, is relatively new. It's not like in the private sector where it's been around for a long time. You have internal auditors and you have that capacity built in there. So one of the problems you had with the state sector was getting internal auditors onto your org structure. That process, and I think the PS would ascribe to that, takes quite long when you need to go to CPU to get all that information approved in terms of what salary and an approved org structure. Aside from going to the board and having the board approve an org structure, it then has to go to the line ministry, it has to go to CPU to be able to get a salary, an approved salary to pay an internal auditor. A lot of these companies that are not revenue generated companies, like maybe an NGC that generate their own revenue but operate out of government subvention, most of them have very limited amount of money that the CPO allows them to use to hire an internal auditor. And therefore, one of the biggest problems that you face is that the compensation package is just not attractive for a company, for someone to take up that position. And therefore, companies now sometimes are looking to outsource their internal audit function. But again, it depends on the subvention that you receive. In the case of CPEP, the subvention, I suppose, subvention that they receive. It's not easy to hire internal auditors, and the compensation is not there.
All right. I know that in the public service, from the 80s, I was a former public officer, and internal auditors have been on the establishment since I know myself working in the public service. So I do not know where you are getting your information from. But listen, may I ask the Permanent Secretary to address this matter for me, please? Because it is a very serious matter and it could lead to all kinds of irregularities. I would really like you to, as the accounting officer, give us your recommendation as to how we would deal with this matter.
Okay, thank you, Chair. There is indeed a crisis in the auditing field in the public service of Trinidad and Tobago. There's a dearth of qualified auditors. As the officer from the Investment Division said, it's not an attractive field, and not all the positions are traveling. But be that as it may, we have sought to address the issue of CPEP because we realize there's a crisis at hand. In our last meeting with the CPEP management, our team offered the assistance of the internal auditors attached to the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government on a short-term basis, while they seek to put things in place to recruit their own auditor. But I may caution that our internal auditors are currently stretched to capacity because they audit the operations at head office as well as the 14 municipal corporations. And we only have a staff of 14 auditors of various grades. The highest person is an auditor 3. What we have been doing, before CPEP became our responsibility, we recognized that there was a need to audit the corporations as well. So we assigned our auditors to audit 2 corporations, and we have started seeking to recruit retired auditors from the public service who have 20 to 30 years experience and bring them on short service contracts to audit the various corporations. So by extension, it's possible that we be able to use this strategy to assist CPEP in the short term.
Chair. In that context, CPEP is operating with a management team and workers for looking after the management of CPEP itself. Could you give us an idea of what are the direct charges for the management of CPEP outside of your contractual obligations to the contractors? And this will fall into the question of an internal audit team. How much does CPEP spend on a monthly basis for managing CPEP in terms of your executive team and your other workers who are not contractors?
Who will answer that?
Finance.
Again, good morning. Maybe on average.
We're not hearing you, please.
Maybe on a gross salary for the management team, maybe.
The total for the management of the operations on a monthly basis is about 1.2 million.
Roughly about 2 million. I thought it was just for the executive team.
On a monthly basis?
Yes.
So it costs you about $2 million from an administrative perspective on a monthly basis to manage CPEP. So 24 million per year approximately for the management team and the workers. How many workers do you have working from an administrative perspective to manage CPEP?
Mr. Chairman and the committee, we have a current count of 126 people. That is inclusive of the 6 members of the management team, which is also inclusive of the general manager.
What would be the approximate charge on for the executive team on a monthly basis out of that 2 million, including your general manager and the 5 other members of the executive team?
Through the chair, I think it's approximately about $200,000 a month for the executive team.
And the other 120 workers is about 1.8 million.
Roughly, yes. That also includes our contributions for NIS as well.
All right. In the context of what Permanent Secretary Bascom just mentioned a while ago, CPEP needs internal auditing, and you need quite a lot of auditing of what you're saying, the waste operators and a number of people auditing of the contractors who are not paying the NIS and paying what they're supposed to do. Is it too much to ask for an internal audit team and hiring an internal auditor on a contractual basis regularly to help you and to help determine the way forward based on your management practices for value for money and for effectiveness, efficiency, and so on?
It's certainly not too much to ask. We did recognize that this was a very serious area. And we in the short term, we had attempted to contact a few of the auditing companies to try and at least bring somebody on in the short term while we get the board approval for the position. So it is an area that is of concern to myself as well as the management team. And we are contacting some of these companies.
I have a last question to ask before. In going forward, what is CPEP's thinking from you as the general manager and your executive team? Well, of course, the board isn't here. On the human resource issue of these contractors, the 261, what are you going to do in terms of your management of these? Are you going to terminate some? Are you going to continue them? What are you going to do? What are your plans for these 261 contractors and the 100 plus who are also collecting the garbage, the waste? Any ideas on your future?
Well, we are awaiting board direction, but we do have a reduced subvention And we are carrying the same amount of contractors as we did with a larger subvention. So we are currently reviewing the full gamut of the contractors, and we will make a recommendation to the board at that time.
Yeah, and don't forget, you have to send us the information, who are there 6, 7 years, 7 years, how long they've been there. And just, forgive me, Chair, with just one. How much does a contractor receive on a monthly basis, let's say for a 6-month, a 10-person team? How much does that contractor, CPEP contractor, receive when they have a 10-man team on a monthly basis?
Well, a team consists of 10 workers,
Yes.
but they would have various iterations. I think the monthly fee ranges from about 23,000, Judy, about 23,000 to probably about $36,000, depending on the amount of teams that you would have had.
No, but let's say an average 10-man team.
Average.
We don't have any 10-man team. What we have is one team will comprise of 10 workers.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you're asking, but we could provide that in writing.
Yeah.
I don't have the exact number.
But it ranges from what? You were giving an idea.
Well, what I was giving you was, in terms of the contractors that we have and the spread of teams, it goes back to what finance manager is saying. No contractor will just have one 10-man team, so that's a number we'll have to pull out. They would have 6 teams of 6, so which means that would be 60 workers. And then added to that, they may have another 4, they may have 4 teams, that's another 40 workers. So they could have as much as 200-300 workers for one contractor.
Really?
Yes.
All right, we are inching and rushing towards 12:30. There's a sitting of the House of Representatives at 1:30. So we want to conclude in the next few minutes. I want to ask the finance manager to go to the CPEP financial statements for 2014 and turn to page 18 of that report under personal costs.
I don't have the audited financials in front of me right now.
Okay, well, let me read it for you.
Okay.
I see salaries for 2014, $15 million. You said a short while ago that salaries is about $2 million a month.
I'm not sure if that's a yearly figure, is it?
Is this a yearly figure?
It might be.
It might be.
It might be a yearly figure.
Okay. So that, yes.
Yes, because 15 million a month.
But is that, if it's $2 million a month, that is supposed to be about 24.
Yes.
So something is wrong here.
Well, that's in a period before. You're saying 2014?
2014, yes.
Yeah. So if they.
But right now, your total salary
right now
for the month.
For the month is approximately 2 million.
Okay.
So they may have been just above 1 million something like that.
Could you provide us with a list of your permanent employees? When I say the number, we don't want names.
Okay.
How many permanent employees you have there? How many contract employees you have? So we're talking about both within the office, within your office, CPEP, number of permanent employees, number of contract employees, and number of temporary employees that you have in your establishment.
Mr. Chairman and the committee, currently the 126 employees we have within the headquarters are all contracted employees, the management team included. So all employees who are housed there are on contracts. So, but I can't provide you with that list as well.
Okay. Yes, well, we know, we'll want them in writing. Okay, we would have liked to continue, but time is against us. The committee will decide if we need you again, okay? But may I ask Mr. Eddy whether he would like to make any closing remarks as we try to bring our inquiry and public hearing to a close?
Mr. Chairman, Yes, Mr. Chairman. We certainly would like to thank you for the opportunity to come before the committee. Although we are not very long in the position, we want to assure you that we will take every steps to ensure that CPEP is run in the way that we believe that it should. We'd like to thank you and the committee members and simply to say happy holidays to everyone. And we will provide the responses in writing.
Yeah, well, on behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, we'd like to extend our appreciation to the team from the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, the team out of the Ministry of Local Government, headed by the distinguished Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Bascom, your team from the CPEP organization, headed by your good self. We'd like to thank you all for being here. May I also say in closing that we look forward to your recommendations in writing. We are also going to be sending to you a list of all the questions that you would have been asked to submit in writing. There are several questions that we could not have asked this evening because of the time, but we will also send those questions to you to give us written responses to. And we look forward to putting forward some recommendations to the Parliament that would seek to make this organization called CPEP, this company, this state entity, more efficient, more effective, and more economical in its operations. But we look forward, as I said, to your submission. We would like to ask you to have submissions to us within a 2-week period, if that is practical and possible, so that we can do what we have to do on the way forward. So once again, on behalf of the PAEC, we'd like to extend our appreciation to you all for being here. We'd like to thank the members of the media for being here as well, and members of the public who would have been following the proceedings of this hearing live on Channel 11 and 105.5 FM. Yeah, we also thank the Investment Division representatives from the Ministry of Finance for being here. So that we now suspend these proceedings, and we thank you for coming. Thank you.